This is a big, bad week for President Joe Biden. Last week was a big, bad week for President Joe Biden as well. More things are coming out every day that are showing just how far he had actually declined. You've got the cancer diagnosis, which a lot of professional doctors are saying this is not something that came around in 100 days. This is something that grows more slowly, and when you have the rigorous testing of the president, it was probably known. Could have been for years. Prostate cancer can last forever, essentially. And you've got the her tapes that came out on Friday. And then tomorrow, you've got this new book coming out that reveals a bunch of insider versions of things that were painstakingly obvious to the American people from public interactions. Actually, the book really ticks me off in general because of that. I mean, we know he was forgetting the names of close aides because he did it in public. We know he couldn't walk anymore because he did it in public. We know that he was a rambling, often incoherent, would stare into space and show some of those sad symptoms that we're all familiar with from aging relatives and loved ones, that he was doing this all in public. But it seems to me that this whole conversation is deflecting from what was really wrong with the Democratic Party. There are structural issues to address here, but they were wrong on the issues. And you and American Principles Project were really leaders on talking about some of these issues. So I'd love you to go into that.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. And I do think that the Biden cover-up, I mean, it's tough to know which one, but specifically with his health, that is the greatest crisis and scandal in American media history of all time. I mean, it is embarrassing. The average American was far more aware of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. I actually think the media totally knew. They covered it up. That's why they kept him in the basement for the first campaign and really for the entire administration. But it's disgusting, and it is a deflection. It's a deflection from the fact that the Democratic Party has embraced the wrong side of several 90-10 issues. They have embraced the transitioning of young children, where we give children chemical castration drugs known as Lupron. These are drugs that we've deemed as Americans to be too cruel for sex offenders that offend and abuse children, right? It's disgusting. But on top of that, they are saying their essential premise of the entire Democratic Party is if you're white, you're evil and you're an oppressor. If you are a Christian, you're evil and you're an oppressor. And if you're a man, you're evil and you're an oppressor. And by the way, the only way that you can redeem yourself as a man is either to join the LGBT movement or become transgender, right? It's absolutely terrible. And the Democrats, again, I will just say they've taken the wrong side of several 90-10 issues, and they shouldn't be surprised if they continue to lose elections.
So the president was almost on the wrong side. President Trump was very close to being on the wrong side of this issue. He was a New Yorker. Like a lot of these different social issues, if you don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, whether it's the impact on the brain and desires of and loneliness of pornography, or whether it's what abortion actually means and is beyond just a couple slogans, or about who uses whose bathroom, if you don't actually think about them very deeply, you just assume kind of the American live and let live attitude of who cares? I don't care what they do in the privacy of their own home. But President Trump kind of changed from that point of view over the years. Originally, he said, I don't care who uses what bathroom in the White House, and I don't care about it in Trump Tower. And you spoke to him, you met with him, and you pushed him in a different direction. Was that foundation really already laid, or what was the turning point for him?
Well, the turning point was long before I actually had the chance to brief him on the polling numbers. It actually came from the campaign trail. President Trump started talking about specifically the issue of women's sports as early as 2021. I believe it was his first real campaign event after the 2020 election. There was an event in D.C. at the Marquis Marriott that was being hosted by America First Policies Institute. And I will always remember this because I was in the room, and he got his loudest applause when he said he was going to save women's sports. My mother is in Iowa. She saw him at a campaign rally at the Adler Theater there in Davenport. She said, there was actually a moment where he had bragged about the billions of dollars he had brought back to farmers through agriculture. And that got a tepid response. But when he brought up saving girls' sports, the whole room exploded. And there was a moment actually at that event where Trump notice, he said, man, you guys are interesting. You know, I talk about bringing you billions and billions back, but, you know, it gets oh, okay, thank you. But when I say women's sports, you all lose your mind. President Trump's a populist, right? And I think a lot of people lost the meaning of that. It means you want to do the popular will of the American people. That's what he is, and that's what he wants to do. And so what President Trump gets credit for is listening and hearing the American people and actually following through on it. He's been the most pro-family president we've had in quite some time.
You kind of think that when you reject populism, it's not a good path politically.
Yeah, that's right.
But the Democrats, it seems like, are also trying to get the mantle themselves of populism. Bernie Sanders touched on it in 2016. In that first election, I remember seeing him up in New Hampshire, and the people were roaring. I've not seen, even at a Trump rally, seen as much energy as I saw in that primary season. It's faded since. He's bent the knee to BLM. He's bent the knee on all kinds of identity politics that he refused to do in 2016. But do you see any actually rise in populism in the Democratic Party, or an ability by them to get that mantle? Or are they too strangled by these 90-10 issues?
I think frankly, I think they're too strangled by these 90-10 issues, but more specifically, they're strangled by their donor class, right? I think we need to realize that the super elite wealthy in America, the vast majority of them are very evil people. They're callous. They are the licentiousness that our founding fathers were worried about, right? The founding fathers, they weren't talking about license and liberty. They were talking about licentiousness, creating a class of super wealthy people who had no problem doing terrible things to their workers and to their fellow countrymen if they were in the lower classes. That's the elites that run the Democratic Party, and essentially Trump kicked them all out. They're all Democrats now. The people that were destroying the Republican Party have all left. They're now Democrats. They're now at furthest right, they are Lincoln Project Republicans, are Democrats, and all the way
literally
to the Bernie
diddlers.
They literally lost. And Trump has replaced them with something very beautiful. A working class American group of people that really just love their country. They love their families. They love their local communities. They don't really spend a lot of time thinking about politics. They just love their country and want the best for it. That actually has created some problems for us, right? We've swapped out the high propensity voters in the suburbs, the wine drinking, virtue signaling suburban moms that are fine with transing other people's kids and even their own, and we've swapped them out for the white working class guys, the guys that are building up our electrical grid and our infrastructure system. These people don't really care about politics so long as it doesn't affect them, right? Once they start coming for their kids and their religion and their guns, that's when they start showing up to the polls. So we've got a new challenge, Chris. We've got to figure out a way to turn these people out and get them to the polls and make sure they know that even if they're not interested in politics, these Democrats certainly are interested in them.
That's interesting to see that they're held captive by their donors. That was a problem for a long time with the Republican Party, is they had massive scoliosis, where the donors and the base had completely different priorities over what was going on. And I wonder how much that's starting to happen with the Democratic Party now. They're certainly not doing much for Black Americans over the last couple of years. It seemed like everything got worse for them.
Right.
And then you look at the schools, you look at everything else, you look at how it's broken down, it's a disaster. Terry, what was the polling? I read a really interesting profile on you recently. I was glowing. And remind me the newspaper?
Notice.
Yeah. Yes, that was Notice. It was an excellent piece. And it talked about some of the polling that you had done as a group that made you think that we can come back on this women's sports issue. There's been a couple elections in a row where Republicans, talking about women's sports issues, haven't won as much as they expected to. But you saw something different in the numbers, and you pitched that to the president, which ended up making probably his most effective ad of the 2024 campaign.
Well, just to be clear, Chris, the Kamala's for they, them, Donald Trump is for you ad was the most powerful election ad of all time. It was it's not me claiming that. That's actually the Democratic Party claiming that. In their after-action focus groups and research, what they found was that ad was seen more times by more people and was the most often remembered ad by any group of swing voters they sat down with. It was very powerful. And if you go back just to the previous election cycle, all of the same issue sets were there in 2022. Economy, crime, immigration, inflation, all of Biden's unpopular policies. All of those things were present in 2022, but the big missing piece that Donald Trump added in 2024 was the trans issue, but specifically the culture war, right? The broader culture war where Americans feel like they're being told that they're not allowed to tell their schools what to teach their kids, right? That they have no input, they have no seat at the table even. That's kind of crazy. But Donald Trump tapped into the culture war in 2024 in a way that we just hadn't ever seen, not in 2022, definitely not in 2020, and he used it to win. And the reality is that the culture war is the most popular thing going for the Republican Party. It's not even close. Men cannot become women. Women cannot become men. Sure, Americans want to live and let live. They want to treat people politely. But at the end of the day, they don't want you transing their kids. They don't want you in their wife's locker room or shower. They don't want you in their daughter's sports. If we want to live and let live, well, then you got to let us live a little bit too. So it's the most powerful thing he has.
I think people don't understand that when they talk about the culture war, is that for 10, 15 years, the right has been fighting a defensive war. You can't just ignore this stuff. They're literally in your bathroom with you. They're in your stall. They're in your daughter's locker room. Terry, where can people follow more of APP's wonderful work, which I love and, full disclosure, serve on your board for?
Thank you so much, Chris. You can find us at AmericanPrinciplesProject.org, or you can follow me online at Schilling 1776, SCHILLING 1776.
And you're excellent on social media. It's the kind of stuff that gets a man in Washington in trouble, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Thank you.
I look forward to watching your interview on Tucker, and we look forward to having you back again soon. Terry Schilling with American Principles Project. Thank you.
Thank you.